Welcome to the Biz and Tech Podcast. My name is Blake Dowling. I'm the CEO of Aegis Biz Tech, and we are moving tomorrow. So wish me luck as we move for the first time in 20 years. There is so much junk in my office that we should have a garage sale on Thomasville Road. Just kidding. Don't show up. But everything is for sale. Hey, anyway, thanks for tuning into the show today. We have Brian Welch, teacher and county commissioner, as our guest today. Very excited to have you, Brian. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Blake, and congratulations on your new office building.
Thank you very much.
And good luck with that move. I know that's difficult. You guys have been there a long time, haven't you?
We have been at 1310 Thomasville Road for 20 years, and we bought the Florida Internet and Television building a year ago and have been renovating it, and we will move one block, which you think would be easy. Might as well be 100 miles.
Yeah. No, I hear you, and that's awesome. Congratulations, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, let's dive right in.
Yeah.
So, first, on the teaching front, what grade do you teach? Tell us about your job as a teacher.
Yeah, thank you. I've been a teacher at Chiles High School for 18 years. This is my 18th year, and I teach social studies, mostly world history, advanced placement, human geography. I've taught U.S. history, and I've taught AP world history. So social studies all the way, and I've done that at Chiles for 18 years. So the entirety of my career has been at Chiles.
Awesome. Our staff member, Mallory, who put this roadmap together for our podcast, said, Brian's one of my teachers.
Yeah.
He's awesome. So from me to you and from her, you're awesome, man.
Well, it's very, very flattering to hear that, and obviously cool to run into former students, all over town, and to see them on social media, being successful and getting about their lives. And it's one of the great blessings of being a teacher. You get to be with people for a short little window of their life, and it's a great opportunity to connect, and so you can contribute a little bit to those people's life story in that little 8 or 9 months that you have them in class. And so it's a great opportunity to impact, especially at the high school level, thousands of lives over the course of a career or any period of time. So great blessing to be a teacher.
Well, it's the formative years, while you see it as, that small window, people take that window with them, like you said, their whole lives. And teachers that I had at McClay specifically, I'll never forget Mr. Burley, my history teacher. Huge mentor to me. Unknown mentor. Not really at the time, but years later, like, wow, that guy's awesome.
Yeah. Teachers, it's a great opportunity. Social studies teachers tend to be the ones we remember in a lot of cases, just because it lends itself to that conversation, better than like math and sciences and things like that. But
sorry, Miss Obrecht. Geometry, bad news.
Yeah. So I get the luxury of teaching social studies and being with those kids, and I relate well with those kids. I jokingly call myself the teenage whisperer. I can relate well with them, probably because I sort of identify with that age group, and people forget how hard it is to be a teenager, and those 14, 15, like you said, those formative years are so difficult, especially now in the era of social media. So I enjoy having the opportunity to be a positive impact on a kid's day when they encounter so many negative impacts. So if I just have one chance to make a kid smile during the day, I try to seize on that. I definitely don't want to be the reason the kid's unhappy in any given day. So I embrace that. I enjoy that. I thrive on that. And it's lent itself well to me exploring this sort of other aspect of my life, which is, of course, politics.
Awesome. So you set yourself up for this question.
Sure.
Teen slang. Today I read, brat. I don't know what that means. Fire, bruh, bet. What's the most, of course, PG, what's the most ridiculous teen slang in your opinion right now? What do you got? Because you hear it every day, right?
I do. Excuse me.
You're fire, teacher.
Yeah.
I think that means good.
Yeah. Fire means good.
Okay.
Similar to hot when we were kids, you'd be like, whoa, man, that's hot,
Right.
My favorites, and I will quiz my students routinely and be like, hey, what's the slang, So Riz is one of my favorites.
I don't even know Riz. I feel younger by the minute.
You're going to feel silly when I tell you. Riz is short for charisma. So you'd be like, oh, my gosh, look at that guy over there. He's rizzing her up.
Whoa,
Yeah,
nice.
yeah. So you activate charisma by saying, oh, he's got that Riz. That one's a good one. I think sus, oh, that's sus, which is suspect, suspicious.
That's tight.
Ops, your ops are like your opposition. So if somebody's like opping you, they're like, challenging you. They're your adversary. So these are just a few of the great terms that you get to hear working in a school. It really is good fortune for an adult. Keeps you young, keeps you interested, and we laugh a lot in my class. And so I taught 6 classes today, and we laughed a lot. Any of those kids would tell you they had a good time in my class today, even when we're talking about boring things relatively.
Right. Yeah, we have a all-staff teams thread that goes on, all day long, constant communication, and one of our younger team members like, bruh. And I'm like, B-R-U-H. And I'm like, who is bruh? I'm
right.
Who is this bruh person? He needs to get to work.
Yeah.
He sounds like he's slacking. So what led you to teaching? What was your first job? Let's talk about your education. Are you from the area?
No, I grew up in Jackson, Mississippi. Moved here the day after I graduated high school.
Okay.
Went to TCC for 2 years. Went to FSU for 2 years. Then got a master's degree at FSU. Actually worked in politics early in my career. Had to pivot a few years into my career because I did not like working in politics. Strangely enough, I was on the sort of political, campaign side of it, and then would work in policy a little bit. I got my substitute teaching certificate probably my second year in college. It was a 5-year certificate. I just got it for fun because I thought maybe I'd want to be a teacher someday or be a substitute while I was in college. And as it turns out, 4 years down the road, about 3 years into my career, 2 years into my career, I did not like my career. I had a 1 year or 6 months left on my substitute certificate and went and became a substitute teacher about 25 years old, actually. So I was out of college, had a master's degree, went and retrained, did not take it wasn't an education major, was a political science major, both my bachelor's and my master's, and was fortunate enough to get a job at Chiles. I've lived in the Northeast pretty much the entire time I've been here since 1997. So that was my part of town. Didn't want to leave my part of town. Was fortunate enough to get a full-time job at Chiles 18 years ago, in August. So this is, again, 18 years later. Been there the whole time. It's been a huge privilege. And then little did I know that 14 years into that career, it would offer me the opportunity to run for political office, which the reason I got out of politics early was because I was disenchanted by the nature of it. I didn't realize that really my heart was on the other side of it, the elected side of it, where you're actually, basically a service provider.
Right.
I did not like the politics of politics, as we may talk about later. And so it gave me that opportunity, being at Chiles, having, thousands of students over the course of that time, thousands of parents. I did a lot of things at the school besides teach. I was the voice of the football team for 8 years, sponsored every club imaginable, always up there. My oldest daughter just graduated from Chiles. I say she was raised at Chiles, So I've been a big part of that school, which is a big part of that community, which gave me the opportunity to run for office in 2019, 2020. And so it's neat. I've kind of come full circle. I started in politics. I went into something that I loved in education, and now I've had the opportunity to come back to politics, but in a service role as an elected official.
That's a fascinating journey
Yeah.
and a logical journey. A lot of our journeys are so illogical. Mine,
Yeah.
for instance, I started in the music business,
Okay.
ended up in IT, and here we are. Now I host a podcast.
Yeah, I mean, obviously.
Not full time, obviously,
Well,
but looking for new listeners always.
I mean, you're obviously a successful guy, Blake, and I think the world kind of puts you in the lane you need to be in, to be successful. I really believe that, and so again, it's kind of serendipity for me in that sense, and it sounds like for you in that sense because you're really good at what you do, and I feel honored to be able to do what I do, and I do feel like I'm fit for it, and I think we've had tremendous success, in both aspects, and so I just consider myself a very lucky guy. I'm just a privileged, fortunate person.
Well, some days are better than others, aren't they?
Yeah, I think like anything good in life, there are good days and bad days, and I think it's just how you manage that and how you moderate your life or regulate your life or the peace that you can find in your life to deal with the bumpy roads. I try to be as even keel as I can be and just be steady and know that there will be good days and bad days. And like I said, working in a school has been a great training ground for dealing with
anything
politicians.
Yeah.
So, there's all kinds of A lot of times
that's pretty well said.
Yeah, a lot of times around the table, we can all act like children and get really emotional, and you see that with students. So it's a great there's a great congruency there between those two professions, and basically at the end of the day, you're just a service provider. You're trying to help people. So whether I'm helping a teenager deal with an emotional issue or a homework issue or a personal issue or a house issue or a job issue, or I'm trying to solve those same problems at the policy level as a county commissioner, there's a lot of synchronicity there.
Sure. Well, you deal with some highly sensitive areas. It's not so much the kids, I would think, but the parents, and then on the other side, the constituents. I mean,
for sure,
you're accountable 24/7, and I bounce into the education world every once in a while. I serve on the board of a school, and I will step into that world, and I look at head of school James Milford at McClay. I'm like, how do you do this? Car greet in the morning to at night with the sporting events and everything and anything in between. So kudos to him and kudos to you for doing what you do, because
Thank
education, as we talked about a second ago, that's what makes everybody who they are, and we wouldn't be here without you.
Yeah, there's no question. Being a classroom teacher in the Northeast, the thousands and thousands of parents that I've had to deal with over the years are also my constituents now.
Right.
And so it really trains you well on how to deal with your constituents, how to serve them best. There's really no better crossover between those two, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Well, I write for FloridaPolitics.com, but ironically, I never write about politics. I write about technology and media, and new ideas, things of that nature. But let's dive into the political world for our hot topic today, because I've read some of your writings. You wrote a recent article for The Democrat.
Yep.
And so, from the outsider's perspective, our nation is polarized at a national level. I mean, it's been like that my whole life, yours as well. But, these days it's Republican or Democrat, and, people put up those walls. But we're in a blue county, the Florida county that is a lot of Democrats in office, more Democrats than Republican voters, if I read the latest data correctly. So if you take a room full of Democrats, the outsider might say, well, they'll just do whatever they want and get it done, and everybody gets along like Disneyland, but that's not necessarily the case. So in as much detail as you're comfortable sharing, why do you think this public feuding's going on? You think it's like moderates versus what some may call radicals or progressives, or do you think it's just personal? You think people are like, you know what, I don't like your ideas, I don't like you. What do you think it is?
Yeah, I think that, not to get too much in the ether here, but I mean, I'm 45 years old, so I've observed enough, national politics over the course of my life.
Same. I'm 50, so we're in that same
being
generation.
Interested at, my early 20s, let's say I paid attention. I think the level of vitriol that you see at the national level of politics has definitely increased. I can still remember a time, even in the last 15 years, we all remember John McCain correcting the lady when she called Barack Obama like a terrorist at one of his forums he had, or focus groups or whatever. So it's like, that was only in 2008. Okay. So in the last 16 years, we've seen this slow erosion of humanity in politics, I would say. Now, I would correlate that with the just general erosion of humanity in how we deal with each other in the world. And I think you can tie that to social media, the rise of cell phone culture. I think that a lot of people are empowered now to say things in private in the quiet of their home that they wouldn't say it to you to your face. And that's because I think social media has done a great disservice to our societal structure, in the sense that something that's supposed to bring us together has actually torn us apart, because we're so clung to our phones. We feel confident that we can say what we want to say, and then the algorithms are designed to just keep us in that echo chamber and keep us consuming and keep us clicking and keep us on the screen. I think you've seen that bleed over. And working in a high school, I see that all the time with kids. It really is corrosive to the psyche, right? There's no human connection anymore. And in politics, where we're already ripe to denigrate each other and find, really personalize our attacks on each other from a political perspective, I think what you see today in 2024 over the last really 6, 8, 10 years is the erosion of just any shred of unity in our country, right? I mean, you hear people say, oh, I wish we could go back to September 12th, 2001, right? The day after the terrorist attacks of 9/11, because everybody was together. And I remember that day. I remember going and giving blood. I'd never given blood before. We all felt like Americans. We have lost that, unfortunately, in our country in many aspects. And I think that it's really driven by small groups of people on the fringes, between maybe 15, 20% on the right, 15, 20% on the left. That still leaves the vast majority of Americans who are in the middle and just see things from the perspective of a moderate. I would count myself amongst those people. And so as a local elected official, there's a constant effort, I think, to try and squeak those issues into local politics.
Right.
There's this desire to bring that level of discourse to local politics. And unfortunately, that national level of discourse is so bad and so corrosive and so counterproductive. I mean, you see a completely paralyzed Congress. You see a completely futile effort by the executive branch, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat, to get anything done. We basically live in a cycle of just pure politics where you have elections every 2 years for members of Congress. It's just the president never stops running for re-election. Even in the state legislature, they never stop running for re-election. They're constantly raising money. All of that is to the detriment of real policy progress and serves to only feed that political machine, which just further divides us and creates this huge problem. So, I think that I take the approach personally of I just want to do good. Like, that's the lens through which I see my service. I'm not trying to play politics. I don't care about politics. And that was the nature of that opinion piece that I wrote, which was my effort to say, you know what, this is not who we are as a country, okay? John Adams and Thomas Jefferson had aggressive and very, pointed debates over policy when it came to the founding of this country and the way that this country was going to be created. But it was never at the expense of each other's humanity, right? They respected each other after the debates. And we've gotten to a point now where there is so much disrespect between political ideologies that it becomes our identity, and we only want to associate with people who have our identity. Whereas John Adams and Thomas Jefferson couldn't have been on other further ends of the spectrum or what they thought, yet they were estranged for a long time. But obviously there was a mutual respect there, as evidenced by their letters to each other before they passed. So I think that we have lost sight of the goal of public service, which is service.
Serve the public?
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's become, this just very vitriolic, corrosive political environment where at the end of the day, the people who don't get served, who don't get anything out of it, is the public.
Right. Well said. Well, I loved your piece.
Thank you.
And I think the middle of the road is a good place to be, yin and yang. I've posted about this many things on Facebook about politics, and that would be zero.
Yeah.
Keep it to yourself, as my grandmother would say. Sex, religion, politics. Save that for something else. Anyway.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, let's veer over to accomplishments. How long you been in office?
I was elected in 2020.
When did you knock out your first ops?
Yeah. 2020.
See, we bring in the slang.
Yeah, I love it. I would tell you that my predecessor was not my op. He was just
Who was it?
Brian Deloge.
Oh,
Commissioner
gosh.
Deloge.
Brian's one of my outlaws.
Yeah.
Meaning I was formerly related to his family.
Okay.
But we won't talk about
that
here.
I don't know anything about that.
Brian's good people. I was married to his cousin back in the day.
I think that, Commissioner Deloge, was, again, service-oriented guy. And I had the opportunity to run for the office in 2020 and was fortunate enough to be successful. And have had a blast, serving in the position since that time. I mean, it's an incredible opportunity. It's a lifetime opportunity. I tell people all the time, I mean, what an honor, right, to be able to do something like this with your life. Not many people get to do it. It's a fantastic opportunity to put your finger on the scale and use your voice to try and advocate for the things that you believe in, even philosophically, like politics, like we just discussed.
Sure.
But even to a policy standpoint, whether it's stadium funding or road building or blueprint projects or homelessness and crime, you have the ability, you have a microphone, right? And I appreciate that. I relish the opportunity to be able to articulate how I feel about an issue. I relish the opportunity to represent a community of 50,000 people. I don't take that for granted, so I want to be the best representative for those 50,000 people that I can be. There's a huge responsibility there. And so I want to listen to as many people as possible, take all that information in, and make as reasoned and sort of normalized decision as I can. And so I love serving in the job. Obviously, there's a political side of it that you have to navigate to get elected.
Sure.
You have to. I'm currently going through that, trying to get reelected. I would tell you that is hard. That's why most good people don't try it.
Right.
It's a difficult job to get elected. It's hard to run for office. It takes a lot of guts and a really thick skin. I read things every day that make me cringe that people say about me who I don't know, who've never spoken to me and don't really understand what I'm about or what I do. And so, but that's just the nature of it. That's just the way it is. And it should be hard, because it's a big responsibility. And I think anybody who runs for office, I commend them. Even my opponent, I commend them. It's hard. It's difficult. It takes a lot of guts. And ultimately, if you're lucky enough really to win election to office, then I think there's a mindset shift in which you really have to embrace the idea that you serve everybody.
Right.
I was elected by 22,000 people in 2020. 15,000 did not vote for me. Well, I feel as obligated to those 15,000 people as I do to the 22,000 who supported me. My job is to serve everyone. I really don't care about the politics. I don't care about if you're Republican or Democrat. And that's the beauty of local government is nobody cares about that. These are nonpartisan races, which is a beautiful thing.
Yes, nobody uses the word deplorables.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it's really about vision. It's about what can you do, what can you get done, what do you want to get done. And I think if you can articulate that, work with your colleagues, work with your community, you can have success. And I would tell you we've had tremendous success in 3.5 years, and I'm very proud of that.
What do you put at number one on that list of successes? Do you have a passion project?
Yeah.
Something you're so proud of that you're like, this is why I got into this?
No question. When I ran in 2020, the Northeast Park project, which is a blueprint project, was my number one priority because really it reflects really all of the investment in Northeast Tallahassee from an infrastructure standpoint that has yet to happen. And the Northeast Park was 10 years down the road on that list. It was not prioritized until 2035. So we came in there in 2020 and we said, we want to reprioritize this. What do we have to do? And so we went through a lengthy 2-year process at Blueprint to do a substantial amendment. I think people kind of lose sight of the fact that you have to build a lot of consensus to do anything like that at Blueprint. And so you have to have unanimous support for those, or you have to have the vast majority of the support for substantial amendments. And so we were able to accelerate the Northeast Park's construction timeline from 2035 to 2025. We'll break ground on that in October, and that's a huge victory for the residents of Northeast Tallahassee.
Awesome.
And then you combine that with Willani Boulevard's construction, Bannerman Road's widening, and the Market District Park down there next to Sage. Those are 4 big blueprint projects, $250 million that's coming back to District 4, which is my district where we see a lot of growth, we see a lot of new businesses, we see a lot of new homes, and we need that infrastructure investment. And so the Northeast Park is definitely my proudest accomplishment. I think that was the biggest Titanic to move, the biggest ship to steer, and we were able to get that done in the first 2 years, and so I'm really proud of that.
Awesome. Let's veer away from politics and education. Time travel. Where would you go? Anywhere in the world, as they say.
It's funny. I thought about this question. I'm a history teacher, right? So
you've got all the options right at the tip of your tongue.
And I've traveled extensively with my students. I take students on international trips. And so, I've taken students to Normandy. I've walked through the cemetery. I've taken students to the Coliseum. I've watched the Sydney Symphony in the Opera House with symphony students. I've done cool things with students. So for me, if I look back at history, where would I want to go and what would I want to see? Mostly it's big conflict zones, which would be unsafe for a time traveler. I want to go see the French Revolution.
It would probably not be good to be embedded in the French Revolution.
I want to go see France, in the 1780s and 90s there, and see that sort of period of time. I would want to go see, D-Day. I would want to go see, Germany and Europe during World War II. So I would say that the answer to that question is in a peacetime environment, I would want to see like 1950s America, post-war 1950s America, when GIs were coming home, having babies, building houses, getting washing machines. You saw this huge investment in technology and science with the space race and NASA. I would, that the Greatest Generation period. I think you look back on that period of time, and that was, I think a lot of people would consider that the glory days of American history. When you look at the progress that was made, the unity that our country had, it was Cold War, obviously, so we were united against this sort of communist threat. But, society at that time in the 1950s seems, and I know there were racial tensions and strife, and everything wasn't as great as it's portrayed, but I would love to see, America in the 1950s with the GIs coming home, but also to experience the racism that occurred. I grew up in Mississippi, so, even though those were terrible times, that is as informative as the good experiences of those times. So I'd say the America in the 1950s.
Yeah, I'm watching a show on Apple TV right now, not 50s, but it started in the 60s, For All Mankind, chronicling the adventures of NASA, but veering from reality. The Soviets beat us to the moon.
Okay.
And instead of an arms race, the space race just keeps going.
Yeah.
And shuttle program and beyond. I think I'm in season 3, and they're just hitting Mars.
Oh, wow.
It's a fascinating show. Check it out. What are you watching? What's if you had to pick, what's your favorite TV show about this summer?
I'm not much of a TV show guy. I like miniseries and things like that. I really am into the Taylor Sheridan stuff on Paramount. So Yellowstone, 1883.
Loved it.
1883
I do
was
that
great.
girl's voice a lot. And we arrived on the plains, and it was was omniscient. She has a great voice.
The thing I love about Taylor Sheridan is the authenticity of those productions. Like you look at the Fort Worth Stockyards in 1883, and you're like, wow. And that's post-Civil War America. So that stuff, all those shows on Paramount. Mayor of Kingstown, I think, is really good. Tulsa King with Sylvester Stallone. So I like all the Yellowstone. What's the 1923, the other one?
I haven't seen that one yet.
Really good. Looking forward to the second season of that. So I would tell you that my favorite ever miniseries of television ever produced was the first season of True Detective. If you've never seen that,
never seen it.
Phenomenal. Woody Harrelson, Matthew McConaughey, 8 episodes, just unbelievable. Like very sort of like crime noir. Unbelievable. Best 8 episodes of television I've ever seen.
Mentor. You have one?
I don't have one. I probably have a series of mentors. My father wasn't really involved in my life, so I don't have like a father mentor. My mom's pretty strong single mother, through my middle school, high school years. Professionally, Alan Cox gave me my job at Chiles, who's a recently retired assistant superintendent. His wife is Lori Cox, who just won re-election. Alan, from an educational standpoint, was a great mentor to me, a fantastic principal at Chiles High School, really knew how to deal with that community and the families out there. Learned a lot from him, and just from a professional perspective, I would say him. And then, I've had so many, professional colleagues who bring you up, when you're a teacher and you don't know what you're doing. Teachers are really work together to lift each other up. So I've had lots of teacher mentors and, just kind of no one single person. I just kind of took a village, I guess, to raise Brian Welch up.
Nice. If you had to pick one moment, personal or professional, what's your proudest moment?
Well, my proudest personal moment would be marrying my wife, who was like, some people win the lottery. That was my lottery in life. My wife is my best friend. We've been married 20 years. Been together 25 years. So, I literally met her in 1998, so 26 years when I moved to Tallahassee. She's from here. My best friend, my definite life partner, deals with all of my adventures and my desire to do these kinds of things and run for office and take kids to Europe and all over the country and the world. And So, and then I have 3 kids. Those are very proud moments. My kids and my family, very important to me. Professionally, look, winning a seat on the Leon County Commission was without question a watershed moment in my life. I don't think anyone that had known me when I was 12-year-old, 13-year-old Brian Welch would have ever thought I would have amounted to anything. So I had low expectations. I think I came from low expectations, and honestly, always that kind of drove me to be successful in life. I didn't have a lot of advantages. I, didn't come from any kind of like good name or anything like that. So I've really scratched and clawed my way to success in whatever way you measure that. And so winning an election to the Leon County Commission and that's certainly an honor of my life professionally. And, in the sort of micro sense. And in the macro sense, getting to be a school teacher for however long I get to do that. Like I said, I'll probably finish my career doing that.
Nice.
That's certainly something to be proud of.
Awesome.
Yeah.
If you had one book for the rest of your life, what would you read?
Oh, man. I just finished A Land Remembered,
Okay.
if you've ever read that, which was profoundly good. My favorite book ever is called Shoeless Joe, which is the book that W.P. Kinsella wrote, which was the basis for a Field of Dreams. Mm-hmm. So the movie Field of Dreams is based on the book Shoeless Joe by W.P. Kinsella, which is, I'm a big baseball guy.
Nice.
Not just I played baseball, but I love the pace of baseball, the elegance of baseball. It just my speed of a game. I think you almost have to play baseball to appreciate that. It's hard to spectator game.
It's a long sport.
I love the fact
per
that
game
it's
capacity.
such an elegant game. It's a slow game. It's not on a timer. It takes as long as it takes. And I could sit at a baseball game by myself and just enjoy it. Observe the nuances of it. The little things matter in baseball, I think, more than in most sports. And so, Field of Dreams, one of my favorite movies, a beautifully written book, Shoeless Joe. That sort of historical fiction. It takes history and kind of applies this fiction to it, like you're talking about with the space race. And so, yeah, that would be my favorite one. And it also has a strong sort of paternal component to it.
Mm-hmm.
This whole if you build it, he will come thing. And so it touches me in a emotional way because of my own upbringing. Without really having a father in my life. So great book, highly recommend. That would be my favorite book.
All right, as our final question today, you just touched on a couple, so if it takes us back there, let's do it. But what was your biggest challenge in life? I mean, I think about that question a lot in my own experiences, my own journey, and I have a different answer depending on the day. But what do you feel like your biggest challenge was?
Yeah, I think my biggest challenge in life, I mean, if I had to look back on it, I grew up in a pretty rough part of Jackson, Mississippi. I
used to go to Hal and Mal's there.
Yeah. I think so.
Venue?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I grew up in South Jackson, Mississippi.
Okay.
Lived in an apartment complex for starting at like 6th grade, and single mother. School was rough. My high school's closing this year. I mean, I told you that it's closing down.
Mm-hmm.
I think being able to navigate the environment I was in as a child, where there was a lot of violence, not like in my house, but like just in the community, crime, drugs, violence. I think I was very fortunate. I had a really good group of friends who kind of also, everybody was a single mom kid. Like nobody knew their dads.
Right.
And so we kind of raised each other, my little group of 4 or 5 buddies. And they were
cool.
all, their values were in the right place. They wanted to go to school and make good grades. They weren't nerdy or anything, but they were, they wanted to go to school. We still had a popular group, and it wasn't. So it was healthy in the sense that, I had a little bit of a village there to help me. And then, getting through that without really getting into trouble. And I was always pretty averse to trouble, so I was good at avoiding trouble. But I think getting out of Jackson, Mississippi, even though I respect and love the place and the state, getting out of there, I had a grandmother, I should say a great mentor to me, my grandmother, who passed away 2 years ago. She lived in Tallahassee, and that's the reason we moved to Tallahassee. My mom and my sister and my stepdad by then moved to Tallahassee together. So getting out of Jackson, Mississippi and coming to Tallahassee and going to TCC as an out-of-state student for a year working at Kelowna Country Club from 6 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon as a freshman, and then going to school at night from 5 to 8 with a bunch of adults. That was certainly a defining moment in my life and something that was challenging. I moved here in 1997, and I knew 4 people. I knew 3 people in my family and my grandmother and my aunt, so 5 people. And then to be able to take, that was 27 years ago, 23 or whatever years later, to then win election to the Leon County Commission, I think that says a lot. I was able to cultivate a pretty good life for myself, moving somewhere at 18 years old and leaving behind that group of friends that I had known, and leaving behind a whole life that I had grown my whole life, and basically starting from scratch in Tallahassee, Florida, and was able to leverage the resources we have, the educational resources, the social resources, the community resources, and build myself a family and find myself a career. And then ultimately that allowed me to get into public service and do what I do now. So I look back on that and I think, man, I'm a lucky guy. Was that hard? Yes, it was hard, but I'm certainly proud of it and happy with where I'm at. So that would maybe the long answer to that question.
Great answer. Thanks for sharing that journey. How do people learn more about you? How do people support you? You got any events coming up? Got the election coming up? How do people learn more about Brian Welch?
I've got a website. It's welchforleon.com. If you want to learn anything about the campaign side of things, welchforleon.com, just straight up. And then we have on all the social medias, we're at Commish Welch for the commissioner side. So if you want to communicate with us, you have any concerns, issues in the community, whatever, there's sort of 2 hats you got to wear right at this time of the year. So, obviously our priority is on serving. It's not on running for office. Right. So if you have issues, you can find us on the internet. You can email me at welchb@leoncountyfl.gov if you got issues. And then if you want to learn about our campaign, our vision, what we want to do, what we want to achieve in the next 4 years or a second term, you can go to welchforleon.com, and we've got links to all of the articles that were written about the things we've accomplished. I mean, we really have accomplished a lot in 3.5 years. I'm really proud of it. I don't even have time to talk about it usually. So, we invite people to reach out. We try to be very responsive. We get back to people right away in any capacity, whether you're asking about campaign issues or you're asking about policy issues. So would love to hear from anybody. Like I said, welchforleon.com or at Commish Welch on all the socials.
Awesome. Thank you, Commissioner, for joining us today. Sir. Great to learn more about your career and your journey. Thank you for listening today, everyone. Thank you for watching. Personal shout out to my wife, Jeannie. We just returned from the Tallahassee Chamber of Commerce Conference. It was a great weekend. Shout out to Aegis BizTech, the coolest IT company in town. All of our clients. Our move would not be possible without you, so thank you. And to the best producer of podcasts in the land, Josh, with Level Up, 5 years in the studio. That's a wrap for today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time on the Biz and Tech Podcast. My name is Blake Dowling, Aegis BizTech. See ya!